Running the Moab 240 ruined me, and today we're going to talk about it. You see, last October, Jeff Pelletier reached out to me and asked me to come pace him in his attempt of the Moab 240-mile race. Now, this race is incredible. It runs through southeast Utah, goes up on massive peaks, and it's just a beast of a race. But he asked me to come and pace him, and I tentatively said yes. And I say tentatively because I had not been running for months. I finished my ultramarathon in July and I had not run since then. I had still been active, I'd been doing a lot of backpacking, but I was worried. So I was thankful when he asked me to sub in at mile 115 and do some mountain miles with him, where if I wasn't feeling good, I could jump out of at a crewable aid station. So I got there to the race, he came in and he was looking great. He was sitting in about position 8 and I subbed in to do my first leg of this event. Honestly, I had a lot of nerves coming into this because Jeff is a premier level athlete. In fact, he has a massive YouTube channel specifically about running and running these massive distances. So I was a little worried that I couldn't keep up. Thankfully, I was fresh and he wasn't, and we did these mountain miles going up to nearly 11,000 peak pretty well. So I continued in and I stayed in for a full 30 miles. Now, during this 30-mile segment, most of the running was at nighttime and in very cool temperatures. Also though, I got to watch Jeff work from position 8 all the way up to position 4, which was really, really cool to see. We passed a handful of people and I really had that front row seat during this time. After we finished this section and we shared a bunch of stories and had a very, very good evening out on the trail, I tapped out in the middle of the night, went back to my truck and slept for about 3.5 hours curled up in a ball in the back seat. Not the wisest way to sleep after you've run 30 miles. Either way, I got up the next morning, checked my legs to see how I was feeling, hydrated, got a bunch of food in me, and all I could think about was how Jeff was in position 4. And I knew he was looking better than some of the guys ahead of him. You see, when Jeff came into this race, he was only looking to be in the top 10. Privately though, on the trail, he told me he was hoping for a top 5. Well, he was well into the top 5 position now, and I knew he could do even better and that we could get him on the podium. And that thought circled around my head. So what did I do? I tested my legs a little bit and I decided to ask Jeff at the next crewable aid station if he wanted more help and wanted me to sub in for another 30 miles. Now this was a risk for Jeff because if Jeff took me on the trail and I had issues, I started to cramp up or something happened to me, Jeff has to stay with me, meaning that it would derail his race, slow his race down, and make me basically a liability for him. The goal though is for a pacer to be lifting up and helping the runner. And this became a little bit of a concern, so I wrestled with that thought all morning until we saw Jeff and I felt confident enough to ask. Jeff said that he could use the help, so I tagged in for another 30 miles, and arguably, and what Jeff would say, were the toughest 30 miles of the race. You see, this 30 miles was still in the heat of the day for half of it, and then the next section was just climbing through the La Salle Mountains, and again, getting up to about 11,000 feet. Hanging out with Jeff's crew and also talking with Jeff, I learned pretty quickly that Jeff is a very strong finisher, and that maybe perhaps sometimes he doesn't push hard enough early in the race and might leave some on the table. So as I went into this, I was reading Jeff, I was reading the people in front of him, and my secret goal was to stay about a half a step ahead of Jeff and try to break him into running as much as I could, to try to get him to push a little bit harder in this section where he still had 60 plus miles to finish this race, but to try to get him to close this gap. Also, during this time, I had my phone out and I was refreshing, and I was letting him know that we were catching up to third place, and third place was catching up to second place, and second place was catching up to first place. This entire race was getting tighter and tighter, and it was very exciting. We pulled into an aid station at about mile 15 where we first saw the third place guy. He saw that we were going to turn that aid station ridiculously quick. In fact, after being out there for 15 miles in hot desert conditions, Jeff turned that aid station in maybe 10 to 12 minutes, which was remarkable. We took our food to go, but the third place guy named Aaron saw us, saw the pressure, and it really pushed him out of that aid station. Our hope though was that we could maybe catch him on the climb. So we left that aid station, and sure enough, we start climbing and we're climbing.
Slowest speed pass in history here. We're just following Aaron up the climb. But Jeff, been seeing some things?
Oh yeah. And we get close to the top of the pass, the high point in this route, and we get right on the heels of Aaron, but instead we pass another gentleman by the name of Taylor, who had actually been leading in this race.
We got Taylor here.
Yes, sir.
How's it going?
How are you?
Doing good.
And 20 yards later, we pass Aaron.
Yeah.
Good. Keep it up, guys.
So we catapulted ourselves from 4th position up to 2nd position. Now the rest of that night was filled with me helping Jeff navigate during some really dark hours with some really rough trail to navigate through, and was just a series of obstacle courses. We got to what's called Geyser Pass, and this is where I was gonna tee out.
Dude.
Nice work, man.
Yeah, nice work, you
Could've done
dude.
without you.
You just kept grinding up those climbs and
You guys killed it.
paid off.
Jeff took a nap there. We saw the first place guy in the aid station. However, Jeff needed some rest, and so the first place guy got about an hour lead on Jeff. However, we were very hopeful that Jeff would catch him because Jeff looked so good, and Jesse was actually suffering. The first place guy was suffering from some pulmonary edema and some Achilles foot issues. So we thought, hey, Jeff can catch him. We have a lot of faith in him. He has 40 miles left to do it. Well, this was the closest race in Moab 240 history, and by the last mile, Jeff had put so many miles, it really closed that gap so much to the point that there was only about 3 minutes between them when Jeff realized that, he just didn't quite have enough miles to chase Jesse down. So Jeff ended up finishing in the 2nd position in the Moab 240 race, and I have to tell you, I think that ruined me. It was one of the most exciting things that I saw in 2023 and was a part of in 2023. And even though I wasn't the guy racing, I got very emotionally involved in this, and it was so fun to see. I learned a lot from watching Jeff and his crew during this entire effort. And it perhaps made me make a decision that I'm going to regret here shortly. Bryce Canyon 100 miler. All right, we're in. Committed. You see, I watched him go into aid stations and turn aid stations so quickly. I watched his commitment to relentless forward progress instead of taking breaks here or there. I watched how he would actually slow down a little bit in the heat of the day and conserve just a little bit to then be able to push a little bit harder in the evenings or on climbs to come. However, the biggest things that I did learn from this effort came from me internally. I learned about myself that I do 1,000 times better running in cold, cool conditions. So running through the night, my body did so much better versus in the Tusher race when it was in July, a lot of exposure, a lot of sun, and a lot of heat. I have to drink almost 2 liters of fluid per hour in order to stay hydrated, versus during this effort, I was drinking maybe a little bit over 1 liter per hour, and I just felt great. No cramping, no issues regarding that. I also learned that when I dial back my pacing just a little bit, it really helps my gut a lot, but I was actually able to eat food and stay in a good position GI-wise the entire race, which was very confidence inspiring because both of my ultramarathons prior to this, I struggled immensely from cramping and gut issues. So leaving this race, feeling like I could have probably done the last 40 miles with Jeff. Of course, that was too big of a risk to take for his race, but I felt that way. It kicked off this thought that I haven't been able to shake. And the thought was, I think I could complete a 100-mile ultramarathon. Maybe if I ran a race in a little bit cooler temperatures, not quite as high of altitude, and maybe on some better trails, not quite so steep, that I might be able to finish 100 miles. At the time of this recording, I only have 2 more weeks of hard training before I begin to taper and rest my body. So we're gonna find out soon enough if Jeff ruined me and made me embark on something that's a terrible idea, or if he inspired me to do something great. Now, if you guys want to be inspired and watch one of the most amazing films of the year, we're going to link down below Jeff Pelletier's video of racing the Moab 240. It's amazing. It already has hundreds of thousands of views, so go check it out. You don't want to miss it. And with that, I hope that this inspires you guys to go and push yourself out on the trail, do something you didn't think possible, and learn more about your individual bodies and hydration. With that, we'll see you guys out on the trail.